Well, this is the overview of the demo. Let's start it up. Because of an issue in 4.21, I'm unable to actually release the playable demo because of the fact that the nav mesh generation in a published product is actually broken right now in 2.1, I mean 4.21. Um, they said they don't know when it will be released as a fix. So for right now, I'm just going to try to cover the demo, try to go over the different aspects of it, the and explain, the general things that appear in the demo and how they work. And right now we have the title screen, which is the pretty much basic start of the toolkit in general. I tried to make everything from the back forward, so that way it'll be easier for you to flow in general. Um, if you hit start, I have in my example what I use for my game in general. Mind you, this is just the base start of it. I haven't gotten that far in it, but I wanted to give this as a better example of a title screen than what I had before because it was pretty dull, pretty blank. It was when I was first learning how to do a intro title, things like that. And now I've learned how to use different type of controls, the different camera changes to be able to get a better feel of a title screen in general. And here you can see the loading screen. And I got a credits. So this is just a general area that when you get the actual demo files, you can look through, see how I did all this setup, see how I loaded things into the different objects. Like this is my favorite effect right here, being able to put the 3D widgets into our actual objects and get them to feel like they're in the world. Let me start the demo. Now throughout the entire engine in general, one thing I've added is basic sound cues that you can easily switch out with whatever sound you want to use. So for inventory accepting the select sound, just the general sounds in general, I've tried to make it to where you can switch out your sounds easy without having to go through and change things in the actual programming to be able to replace sounds. So that way, from a general area, you can replace sounds. This is the first part of the demo area that I've shown off before. Just tells you about the toolkit in general, how everything works with the database manager, with the event files and the database. The RPG manager, which is the game instance now. Before I had it as a separate object. It was harder to use that way, and it was always destroyed every time you go in between maps. But now it's a game instance object, so there's a lot of things that you can probably add to it, to where if you want something else like a timer countdown or something like that to be able to go from one map to another, you can add it to the game instance to be able to use it that way. This just goes over the basic implementations that I have in the system, from the PC hero that I'm using right now to the AI monsters that walk around, the NPC objects and event triggers that they contain. You have interaction objects like chests and resource points, AI behavior that I have for the world and battle. I have a turn-based system now versus the action one that I had before, which wasn't really fully implemented, and it was just it. I was not proud of it. And then you have the UI state system that pretty much can switch you from different UI states based on general state definition. I have helper objects, core helper objects, and extra helper objects. It's just different implementations of things that I would think that would come along with any general RPG that could help, start you on the path of what you're trying to do, as well as help me with what I'm trying to do. Um, I'm just going to go by these real quick. As I said before, the PC hero is what you actually control. Even if you use a different base character object, you can still parent it to the PC hero to make it work with anything in the system. I tried to make everything as modular as possible. So if you reparent an object to something that's in the system, it should automatically work without any headaches or things like that. I've gone over this in another video, but I'll try to see if I can touch this real quick. The actor data is something that defines this character in general, from everything from what appears in their character page on the item menu to what shows up in their battle, what icon shows up for them in the battle, to what mesh shows up for their body, and what morph data that they're going to have saved to them. What morph data they have that they can use for the randomization of a character's face and things like that. Then you have the class data, which controls pretty much what animation this character has attached to it. I'm going to go more in depth in these later when I actually go into the objects and show you how I set that all up. But pretty much, as it says here, you can set up your animation blueprint, your class, movement speed, any animation that is used for this actual character class. And pretty much you can set up your skills for both action and turn-based combat, as well as set up, just a general list of magic skills and things like that. Weapon data, like I have on my back right now. Everything, a weapon and an armor does not necessarily have to have anything physically attached to it. Like if you have a 2D game, you don't really define a physical matter for a weapon. That can come from the general stuff in the database. But if you need to be able to assign a mesh or a skeletal mesh, or have, extra information for that weapon, you can define it inside of the weapon and armor data blueprints. Again, I'll go over that more later. The animation master blueprint is what I use to not have to make a different blueprint for every character. Since we have, definitions for the class data, I try to use a class data within the actual animation blueprint to dynamically load animations for any different character. So that way you can have your different walk sequence, sneak sequence, swimming sequence for any character, but still keep your code programmed once for your actual animation. I have interaction objects just like any other game that you can interact with. A different turn-based mob, and this is why I'm bad at speaking. I have just different like NPC objects that are used in different states of the system. Sorry about that. I used one of my specials. So when we come to NPCs is just a collection of a modular character that can be put together, that can be set up with animations or movement points or just free roaming. And this whole area right here gives an example of how they can be made, how they can be put together. An example of how, just in general, you can set up randomization for an NPC with the different colors, different skin tones, and things like that. I'm trying not to ramble too much and actually get to the other stuff. I have the ability to have events on NPC characters. These events can be triggered by other means for like a, just a touch zone that you walk into to trigger an event, but they can also be attached to NPCs. Each of these NPCs are equipped with about just one example of an event that can be triggered in a multiple series of events. And pretty much this is used to make sure that each different aspects of an event is properly working. So like right now I can remove myself from the party, and I have my other party members still in the party. I can add them back, and now the organization of the party has changed, and I have the other character back that I can switch to. Example of just simple playing a movie. Character customization, which is something that I've tried to add previously, but now I have the ability to go more in depth with it, especially with the different levels of changes. I can change my height, skin tone, based on, the parameters that's already built into the character. So if your character does not have a skin tone material, then this will not work for it. You can go through and change the hair. This character doesn't have hair, so none of this will actually work on it. I don't have any morphs for this example character, but I do have it to where all these morphs are saved inside of the database once you actually apply your morph to it, and pretty much it saves the morph name and the value, so that way when you load your character it can apply those morphs to the actual character. I'm going to try to see if I can get an example of this working once I start working on my game, so that way I'll actually have characters that I can use to actually show off these morph informations. And again, these can be configured however you have it. So if you don't have a lip morph, or you have the name differently, you can easily in a modular way change this to be able to change your character in your game however you want to. Right now I think this character only has clothing color material on it, so I can change this. I can go over here, see if I can get a little metal going on. That'll work. And I can apply that change. I can also switch over to my other character that does have skin, and I can change that, or I can also use the random button to randomize all the different parameters from the morphs and the colors and the height change to try to, get a good randomization of my character to try to figure out how I want them to look in the world. So I'm going to apply that, and now anytime I load this back up after I've saved, I'll actually have this character information. But until you save, these character information, character customizations are only stored in the active database. See if I can get some money around. All right. Just examples of many different things you can do for just general aspect of a game. I give myself EXP. If you can see right here, I've already gone up. And now I should be able to level up. I put a specification here to be able to handle leveling up outside of a party. Many people do it different ways of what happens when you level up outside of actual battle, not party. So I just put just general handling in here, so whatever you want to change this to, you can change it to in your system. This is an example of a teleport. Just moves you to a different node point as specified in the event. I've moved myself backwards a little bit. One thing I didn't cover is this part with the NPC. I've tried to make something called a point of interest, and that's when you can make different objects like a sofa that have NPC points on it that tells the NPC hey, I'm available. If you look around, I'm available. You can come to me, and then start a interaction sequence that will make the NPC do whatever you want. So if you have a bar and you have different bar stools, you can have a special point of entrance on that bar stool that the NPC can scan around and find, go to it, and start its interaction sequence, which would be, sitting down, taking a drink, going to sleep at the bar, anything that you want to actually do for a given amount of time until they're done, and then they can go on and do something else in the world. And I tried to make this to where I just don't have NPCs mindlessly wandering around, and try to use it to add some kind of life to the world. Even though right now I think I have so many NPCs in this area that they are just constantly bumping into each other. Even though I have the AI avoidance enabled, this kind of NPC bumping into each other still happens. It's not as bad with it off, but it still happens. I think I'm about to lose daylight. Again, just more examples of how to play audio through an event. This is where I can change the time of day. Weather change, I don't have implemented, but I do have a hook into the system to where if you have some kind of weather system, you can do a event call to it to be able to tell, hey, I want to switch over to this weather type. And right now, it's just a blank event that doesn't really do anything. I have an example of an N. I can go here, rest my characters for whatever amount that is generated. If you have a dead party member, that'll cost more to be able to stay at the end to be able to recover your character. Again, this stuff can be configured in the database manager for how much it costs per character. If a character is dead, how much added cost that would be. Whether or not you have a save and load point at an end is controlled by the database. Speaking of which, I think I'll save real quick. So now my character information, my current items, and everything is saved in the database. I have an example of the store. So I can go in here, buy a few items. I can also sell items if I want to. I actually already have these items, so I don't need these. Buy some gear. And I can buy some resources for crafting. Now, one thing I don't have is the actual implemented crafting system. Excuse me. But I do have it to where you can define what items can be crafted from. I don't know if I show this in the actual inventory. I don't. But in every item, either be it a weapon or armor, or just a general item, you can specify in the database manager. If I can bring that up. You can specify in the database manager what resources it would take to be able to craft this item. So if you make a crafting window, you can either queue up a list of known recipes, or you can go through the database and try to put together a active list based on what ingredients you have to show the player, hey, you can make this since you have these ingredients. Depends on however you want to set that up. I'm going to resave. So in general, for the events, be it triggered by an NPC or triggered by an event zone that you just walk into, an invisible zone that, can trigger an event. All this stuff can be used to pretty much put together a event sequence that can be used for a quest or anything like that. And I have an example of that in the other room. But for right now, I'm actually going to change the time of day. Alright, so now it should be morning. Yes, it's morning time now. So at least I have a little bit more daylight. Right right here I just go over all the different changes that I've made through this 4.0 pass. In general, what I had before was overly complicated. I tried to cover too many bases at once for all the different types of RPGs. I tried to make things strip as much as I could out of the database to keep the database simple, clean, without any complications added to it, and made it to where the complicated stuff can be done on the blueprint side or in the base C++ once it comes over into this system. I'll cover more of that stuff later, because as I said, there's a lot of different things that are in the system that I didn't necessarily cover in the original release, mainly because I wasn't good at talking. I'm not definitely not good at talking now, but I have so many things that I've done that explaining it is a difficult thing for me. I just know how it works, but as I seen before, not everyone understands what's placed before them. So I'm trying to make it to where I can explain things to where everyone can understand it. Let's see. Let me go in here. In here I just talk about the battle systems, how they work in general. As I said, I'm going to go more in depth on this later. Then we have an actual save point crystal. And at any time I can actually load back to wherever I was before with whatever inventory I had before and whatever customizations that I had. And let's see. So now I have a general just a general event for a treasure chest, and I don't know if you can hear it. I have my volume turned down so I can not have double audio, but the treasure chest was used to actually trigger another event, which is an explosion. But just in case you wanted the opening of a treasure chest to trigger some other event in another map or things like that, or activate the continuance of a quest, I made sure that that could work that way. I also have things that's like resource points that you can find around the world to be able to get, random items and things like that. And this is the part that I have not shown off yet. Please ignore the animations. They are awful, and I know that. But this is just me putting together an event flow within a sequence. I have a sequence object that I can use to do callbacks to the system to make sure to, pause the sequence and allow other events to happen while you're in that sequence, like dialogue in general, or whatever you want to link to. And I tried to make sure that I had this in a way to where it's easy to use, it's easy to understand how to execute that in a sequence. I'm going to go over that in another video, but this is just a general event flow to use a sequencer, to use dialogue, to try to have a very simple put together cutscene with horrible animations, and an actual choice. So I wanted to make sure that this will actually work with choices. So that way, when you make certain choices, the branching that is inside of a choice actually works. I'll go over it later, but the way I have choices set up is it's kind of like a folder within a folder within folders, where you can have one event flow go to another and go into another one, and then fall out and go into another branching session depending on the choices you've made. So I've tried to put together, if you understand, how can I put this? It's kind of like a linked list in a branching tree format, to where you have your base event. Based on your choices, you can split off to these two events and either exit the event completely within that event stream, or you can fall out into the previous branch and continue that event stream going on down the list. I'm going to see if I can explain that a little bit better later. But right now, I can actually show you what this event list look like. So I think this is the sequence. Actually, that's for the cutscene itself. There should be a choice right here. So within this choice, we have jump back or jump down or turn back. And if I drill into this, I'll get another sequence of events that will execute based on what I do. Now, with the turn back, I actually exit out the sequence completely, and we're right where we are right now. But if for some reason, even after you go through these two branches, and I wanted to have something special at the end happen, at the end of the sequence, no matter what you select, I can add this to the end of this stream. So once it's done with this choice branch, I can come out and execute this. But I can also go into this branch and have another branch within here. So that way you get your branching tree event flow in general. Let me go back through the cutscene, select the other option this time. Also, one thing with this cutscene, I am not using the actual actors that you walk around in the world with. I have a special actor called a cutscene actor that, depending on what you set their ID to, their character ID or actor ID to, it will go in a database before the event is driven, and it will get your customization information about these characters. So if you go and change your character's color, equip a different weapon or whatever, it'll show up in the cutscene like you would want it in the actual game, without having to deal with generating, without having to deal with using the actual characters that are within your scene. And by default, the sequencer hides your main character, so this allows everything to flow properly for a cutscene. And my brain cut off on what I was trying to say. Apologize. But in general, I tried to make this to where it is as simple as possible to use for getting what you want out of your game. That was a terrible jump. Please ignore that. Alright, so now we're in the area that I have for battle testing. I'm going to save just in case. I have the examples over here to teach you about sneaking and prone, which in general I have I use for my game. So I know not everyone's RPG may have these kind of elements and things like that, but if I'm using something and I think it may be beneficial to other people, I'm going to add it to the example kit or the demo in general, if it helps anyone out there, if I think it helps anyone out there. So now I get to the part of using fill actions. And fill actions I have just as just things that I can use for RPG characters, kind of dating back to the Wild Arms, Wild Arm games and things like that, where you can actually have a special quirk for each of your characters that could be used to be able to bring your character to life, or just be able to use your different characters to solve puzzles within the world. I think he just saw me. Oh, no, he didn't. Okay, good. So now I just executed battle with the preemptive strike. I do need to remove these debug lines. I'm going to try to see if I can remove that before I release. But I usually use those to know that, to let me know when a character can actually see me or not, especially with the stealth mechanics that I had in. I needed to make sure that when I'm hiding behind a wall that they can't see behind the wall, but when I stand up, because my capsule box changes when you go from sneak to prone. Well, should I say from prone to standing, then I can see that it actually hits me the correct way. But I need to turn that off in the actual release. So pretty much just in general, if you hit them from behind, you'll start a preemptive battle. I have it to where you can use skills now. So each of the characters have their own little skill that they can use. See if I can get the other skill off. I'm just tell you to attack. I tried to make the battle system a little bit more implemented to be, in tune with what's out there. I could have sworn I bought a potion. Alright. I was trying to show off the item usage in general. I selected the wrong target. But in general, I try to keep everything as plain as possible when it comes to a battle system. I don't have anything special in it. It's just, select the attack. It goes through each of your attacks or combos that you have set up in the system is defined to tell you what animation to use for the attack. It tells you how far away from the enemy you have to be before you actually can start it. Like that magic skill that he's using, well, she's using, versus this skill that he's using can each be configured to say, hey, I want to be this far from the enemy before I want to execute it. I also have it to where if you get hit in the middle of a combo, it will cancel that current combo. But if you have multiple combos stacked up in general, it'll go over to the next stack in the combo. One thing that a lot of people have been asking me is the stuff that I was doing and showing off with my action system where you can pretty much button mash and do attacks. I still have that in the system. I'm going to try to see if I can make a video in general going over that. And if you wanted to implement it, how you can re-implement it. If I can get it going right, I'll try to see if I can release another demo with the action battle enabled. But it depends on the time that I have. This is pretty much just most of the swimming examples that I saw out there were volume based, but in general, the things I've seen is the fact that if I have a river that curves, putting block volumes in there to be able to do swimming is almost nearly impossible. So I pretty much tried to put together a swimming component that I could use that can do, just light traces in the system, light traces from my character to be able to detect, the surface of the water, to be able to add a little bit of buoyancy to push me up if I'm not diving, to be able to, plant me in the water, plant me to the surface of wherever the water is, and be able to give me the ability to swim wherever I put water and however I put water. The only thing I need right now is the fact that this water has a water material, physical material, that I can detect, do traces, and be able to just do general, very, very, very general physics calculations based on my height in the water in general. I feel like I've missed some things trying to explain this. Um, this is the basic inventory system. I'm going to go over this more later, but I've tried to make this as modular as possible. One thing that I had before is my inventory system from my original release was not usable in a modular state. You pretty much had to fully recreate your own instance of inventory system, of the equipment system, where just being able to pull a pool of your inventory had to be rewritten. So I tried to what I tried to do with this is try to make each of the elements as modular as possible. So now I have smart objects like you can see right here with the potion, the mana, the potion 2, that just brings up your inventory and the status of it. That is a smart object. So if you wanted to put this within like some other grid or something like that to display it differently, all you have to do is just go and change that modular element and then change your background for your inventory however you want. But you can still bring up a full list of your inventory using that one little object that has hardly any graphics in it. It's just, the name, the quantity, added information if you want to. And right now I have a little widget that's in there that shows kind of like a class definition of what the item is and an icon that can go with that. But if you don't need it, you can remove it easily and just disable the code that access it. I hope this helps a lot of people in general, because I saw a lot of people were trying to recreate their own inventory system because mine was just not what they wanted in general. But I still wanted to make something that can reduce that time for them to create in general. Just like right here on this main screen, the character setup, this whole thing is self-contained. If you wanted to move this to some other page, it will automatically work, because when it's executed and when you call it, it goes in, gets the character information for whatever character ID you set to it, and dynamically loads their information based on what ID you have. So it's not something that's hard coded everywhere. I tried to make everything as dynamic as possible. Even with this menu that's on the left hand side, I have a general button widget that you can specify how many entries you want, what the button skins you use for it, for the normal, disabled, highlighted button, and it can pretty much generate you a list. You don't have to go in and do some kind of complicated thing to be able to figure out which one is selected. It's a self-contained object. You just say, hey, move to the next selection. It'll automatically update the selection. It will have a callback to tell you what index you have selected without having to go through and do any kind of complicated mess of trying to figure out what is selected, or have variables in every single place you use this object to figure out, hey, I want to go up 1 and I want to loop around when I go to the end. I tried to make separate objects that can do all of this for you in general. I never equipped these. So this is in general is just another example of equip screen that I have. Sorry about the little character view over there. I was still working on that, trying to get a clean cutout of the character. Even when you're using the render pass that they have now to be able to call out your character, I still get little edges of the character. So I may just remove that if I can't get a better quality 3D rendering of your character for this. But I really do want to put the character in an equip screen, to where every time you put on something, put on an equipment, it can show up over there. You can also turn your character to see a 3D version of your character. I really like when games do that. So right now, this is how it is. Most people won't use it, but I know I'm trying to use it for myself. And if it can help other people get to where they need to be, I'm going to add it in and leave it there for other people to tear apart and look at how I did it. I still have my hex grid in here for my map. The option menu, you can go in and change some things. Now these are just general settings that I showed that are just technically in the database. The only one that actually does anything right now, I think, is the video options. I've tried to add a separation object for sound to be able to have the interface environment and game sounds to be able to be controllable, but using the sound class that's available in the system, I just could not get it to operate the way I want to. Hopefully when I get further along into my actual game development, I can figure out fully how to make this work, so that way I can update the toolkit accordingly. Alright, so pretty much that's the end of the actual demo in general. I think I've shown off mostly everything that I have in the demo and the general form of, using the toolkit. This last area in general is a test environment. As I said, as I show here, this is just an experimental map. It contains pretty much everything that I have that is still in the experimental phase. From the NPC crowd generation, which for some reason it's not generating the nav mesh. That's why they're not moving. From pretty much the NPC crowd generation, that I want to eventually use to be able to populate a city really easily with just movable characters that can find point of interest like this sofa, sit in it, interact with it, try to bring some life to a world in an easy way. To the building generator that I have, that it works, but it doesn't look the best in the world. If I can go, trying to see which house actually looks the best. Alright, this one looks okay. I'll go in here. There should be enough light to see everything. So pretty much from like just modular components, I have the building generator made to where you can, in a general term, build a house from like tile sets. And these tile sets are linked to meshes that can generate pretty much a building however you want with whatever modular building parts that you want to use. Most of my meshes are messed up in general. This is back when I'm not the best at 3D art. Like right here, my normals are messed up on the window. Didn't know how to fix it. But I plan on eventually going through and trying to refine this system to be able to make buildings in a city easier in a modular way. And have everything efficient as possible for when you leave these buildings in general, like things like that. All the items will vanish based on LED culling. Trying to make sure that, just everything falls off the way it needs to be able to keep your game efficient enough. It does it now, but it's only because the meshes in general are as low as poly as possible. But I would like them to collapse to a billboard, or try to figure out if I can use the HLOD poly that they have in the system now to be able to switch over to that if it's possible, to just bake a building down to its general form. For experimental stuff as well, this hoverboard is experimental. I'm still trying to figure out how to get the physics of everything to work properly, how to get it not to look weird when I bump into rocks or things like that, and the hoverboard just goes crazy, kind of like that. Well, probably not like that, but it's been worse. Along with this map, it may not be the most efficient one because of another plugin that I've been working on just to, ease my mind away from making an RPG. I love making terrains and things like that. So I have a terrain cover kit that automatically populates terrain with materials, with using the grass system to be able to populate, grass around the world, little bushes. But all the meshes I have are crap. I'm trying to make it to where it's a prettier system in general, and it's easier to use, and it's efficient. I know right now, anytime I use this, it's going to be around 30 frames per second to 40 frames per second. But, it's experimental, and I'm still working on it. But I think that's about it for as much as I can think of right now. In the future videos, I'm going to try to see if I can go more in depth on all the little pieces that make up this system. I'm still working on updating the written documentation. I'm still working on trying to figure out how I can map out these videos to where they can be understandable by most people. As always, I'm always here if anyone gets stuck, gets frustrated, wants to yell at me for any reason. I'm available via email or on my Facebook page. So if you have any questions, just send them my way and I'll help you as much as I can. Because I know this system is complicated. It's got a lot of little pieces everywhere, but once you learn the little pieces, I do believe that it'll be helpful in general for you to be able to use. Thank you. Have a good day.